What happens when a Hollywood star known for her raw honesty faces a talk show host who prides herself on cutting through the facade? The result is television chaos. Before we dive into the storm that erupted between Jennifer Lawrence and Joy Behar on The View, make sure you hit subscribe to Talk Narrative and like and comment below, because what you're about to hear is one of the most emotionally charged confrontations ever aired on daytime TV. The lights on The View stage burned bright that morning, sharp, unrelenting, almost too white against the soft pastels of the set. The crowd buzzed, half in laughter, half in anticipation. Jennifer Lawrence, wearing a calm smile and a soft cream blazer, walked out from behind the curtain, waving to the audience with that trademark mix of confidence and clumsy warmth. She had come to talk about her new film, a story about vulnerability, grief, and resilience. But the air shifted the moment she sat down. Joy Behar leaned forward with that familiar grin, half charm, half challenge. Her red glasses caught the light, and her tone, though seemingly playful, carried an edge. "So, Jennifer," she began, flipping through her note cards, "you've said before that you don't really like Hollywood pretentiousness. But isn't that kind of funny coming from someone who's made millions pretending for a living?" The audience chuckled, unsure whether to laugh or hold their breath. Jennifer's smile faltered just slightly, barely visible, but the camera caught it. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and leaned forward. "Well," she said slowly, "I think acting isn't about pretending. It's about feeling something real and showing it even when it's uncomfortable." Sanani host nodded supportively, but Joy wasn't done. "Sure," Joy pressed, "but sometimes it feels like actors forget that the rest of us don't have the luxury of feeling deeply all day. Some people just go to work," the audience murmured, half gasps, half awkward laughter. Jennifer blinked, her expression tightening. The tone had changed. "You're saying being emotional is a luxury?" she asked, a trace of hurt in her voice. Joy shrugged. "I'm saying it's easy to talk about authenticity when you're paid to cry on cue." That line hung in the air like static. Even Whoopi glanced over, eyebrows raised, sensing the tension hardening like glass between the two women. Jennifer inhaled slow and controlled, her knuckles tightening around her coffee mug. "I didn't get paid to cry," she said, voice trembling slightly but firm. "I got paid to tell a story that might help someone who can't cry, someone who's been through something they can't talk about. That's not luxury. That's humanity." The crowd erupted in applause, the kind that starts hesitant but grows louder as people feel the emotion behind her words. Joyce smirked, half laughing. "Well, maybe. But don't you think Hollywood sometimes takes itself a little too seriously?" Jennifer hesitated. Her eyes flickered down, then back up, the faintest crack in her composure. "Maybe," she said. "But I think people who judge others for caring too much might be the ones afraid to feel anything at all." That was it. The room froze. Even the laughter stopped. Sonny's mouth parted slightly. Whoopi leaned back, and the producer's voice whispered through the earpieces. "Stay on it, don't cut yet." Joy's smile stiffened. "Oh, that's what we're doing now," she said, laughing tightly. "Diagnosing emotions?" Jennifer tilted her head, eyes calm but defiant. "No," she said softly. "Just saying not everything people feel as an act." There was a silence that felt longer than it was. The audience didn't know where to look. Cameras zoomed in, trying to capture the shifting energy, the flicker of something raw. Whoopi finally broke the silence with a low chuckle. "Well, this got real fast," she said, attempting to ease the tension, but it only deepened. Jennifer turned slightly toward the audience, her tone softer now. "You know," she said, "I grew up in a family that didn't really talk about feelings. So, when I finally got the chance to express mine, I promised myself I wouldn't apologize for it. Not to anyone." The audience clapped again, this time louder, longer, some even standing. Joy looked at them, her expression unreadable, lips pressed tight. The energy had shifted completely. What began as a light interview had turned into an emotional standoff. Truth versus cynicism, vulnerability versus humor as armor. Behind the cameras, producers whispered hurriedly. The show wasn't supposed to go this deep. Not this fast. Not with Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer glanced toward Joy as if hoping to reset to pull things back from the edge. "I'm not trying to fight," she said gently. "I just think sometimes people confuse strength with not feeling. And I don't believe in that." Joy forced a laugh, but it didn't land. "You sound like my therapist," she said under her breath. "Half joke, half jab." Jennifer looked at her directly. Maybe you should listen to her then. The audience gasped. That was the spark. The sound of 50 voices reacting at once, followed by laughter, whistles, and a camera zooming straight into Joy's face. For a moment, Joy froze. She blinked, clearly deciding whether to laugh it off or clap back. Her mouth curved into a slow smile, but her eyes, sharp, unamused, told a different story. "Oh, honey," she said, leaning back. "I've been doing this longer than you've been alive." "You don't want to start something you can't finish." Jennifer didn't flinch. "I'm not starting anything," she replied, calm but cold. "I'm just not pretending anymore." The crowd roared. And for the first time that morning, Joy Behar, veteran host, quick-witted icon, looked momentarily stunned. The music faded into a commercial break, but the tension didn't. Jennifer sat back, exhaling, eyes distant. Part of her regretting it, part of her relieved. Joy turned toward her co-hosts with a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. But beneath that polite TV smile, the damage was already done. The cameras went dark for the ad break. But when they came back, the real confrontation hadn't even begun. The studio lights blinked back to life after the commercial break. But something felt different. The chatter had quieted. The laughter had died down. Even the audience, usually quick to cheer when cameras rolled again, sat still, waiting. The tension lingered like static in the air. Jennifer Lawrence shifted slightly in her chair. One leg crossed over the other, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Joy Behar adjusted her cue cards with deliberate precision, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. The polite mask of television professionalism had returned, but under it something colder was brewing. Whoopi Goldberg tried to smooth it out with her usual levity. Okay, she said with a laugh that sounded a little too forced. "We're back. Jennifer Lawrence is here talking about her powerful new film, Beneath the Surface. Now, before the break, things got, let's just say, real. But that's why we love live TV." The audience gave a weak laugh, grateful for the cue. Jennifer smiled politely. "It's okay," she said softly. "I actually prefer real conversations. You learn a lot from them." Joy didn't look at her. She shuffled her cards again and then set them down altogether. "Well," she said with that familiar cutting humor, "since we're being real, let's talk about honesty. You've been called too outspoken in interviews before. Some people think you use emotion to play the victim when critics don't like your work. What do you say to that?" A hush fell instantly over the room. Jennifer blinked. The question hit harder than she expected. Her lips parted slightly before she managed to answer. "I'd say I don't play anything," she said slowly. "And I think anyone who assumes that someone's emotions are a performance might be projecting." Whoopi gave a subtle wusicha, sensing where this was going. Joy chuckled dryly. "Projecting? Oh, honey, if I were projecting, I'd be nominated for an Oscar by now." Laughter rippled. Through a few audience members, but most stayed quiet, reading the tone between the lines. Jennifer's smile faded completely now. Her jaw tightened. "I think sometimes people hide behind jokes because it's easier than admitting something hurt them," she said. Joy's face froze for a split second. She hadn't expected that. The crowd reacted audibly, an uneasy mix of gasps and murmurs. Sanani host tried to interject, her voice gentle. "Joy, I think what Jennifer's saying is that—" But Joy cut her off. "No, I know what she's saying," she said sharply, then turning to Jennifer. "You think I'm hiding behind jokes? You think after 40 years in this business I'm scared of my feelings?" Jennifer's eyes didn't move. "I think you use humor to stay in control. And maybe it works on other people, but it doesn't work on me." The studio audience reacted again louder this time. It wasn't applause. It was shock. Joy laughed, but it wasn't her usual laugh. It was smaller, harder. "You're a piece of work, you know that?" Jennifer tilted her head, her voice steady. "I've been called worse." The tension had thickened into something almost physical. You could feel it through the screen. Even Whoopi, who normally thrived in chaos, leaned forward with her elbows on the table, eyes darting between them. Joy pressed her palms together, trying to regain the upper hand. "You know, I liked you better when you were tripping up the stairs at the Oscars," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Jennifer didn't smile back. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Because back then, I wasn't saying anything that made people uncomfortable." The audience clapped again, hesitant at first, then stronger. Joy leaned back, exhaling loudly. You're really taking this personal? Jennifer met her gaze directly. You made it personal when you called my work fake. When you laughed at something I care about, Joy crossed her arms. That's called a joke, sweetheart. Welcome to television. Jennifer's voice sharpened now, trembling but fierce. No, that's called hiding behind cruelty and pretending it's comedy. The audience oohed collectively. The tension was unbearable. Even the camera operators looked uneasy, unsure where to focus. The show's director whispered through headsets, "Stay wide, don't zoom." Jennifer leaned forward slightly. "I've been laughed at before," she said, her tone more intimate now, almost confessional. "When I first started acting, people told me I was too emotional, that no one would take me seriously because I cried too easily. I used to believe them. I used to try to be cold, tough, quiet, but you know what? It didn't work because pretending not to feel doesn't make you strong. It just makes you lonely." The crowd was silent. You could hear the hum of the stage lights, the creak of a chair shifting. Joy looked at her, her face unreadable. "So you're saying I'm lonely now?" Jennifer shook her head. "I'm saying I think you've forgotten what it feels like to be vulnerable, and maybe that's why you can't stand when someone else is." That line landed like thunder. Joy opened her mouth and closed it. Her jaw tensed. For the first time in years, she looked at a guest not as an interviewer, but as a woman caught off guard. Whoopi's voice broke through softly. All right, she said, lifting her hands. "Let's all take a breath." But Jennifer wasn't done. Her voice softened, carrying a weight of sadness. "Now you don't have to like me, Joy. I don't even need you to. But you don't get to dismiss what I do as fake. I've seen real pain. I've lived through it. And if my job lets me turn that pain into something that helps someone else feel less alone, then that's real, whether you believe it or not." The audience erupted again, this time in loud, emotional applause. People stood, some cheering, some clapping, just to fill the thick air. Joy forced a smile, waiting for the noise to fade. "You done?" she asked quietly. Jennifer nodded once. "Yeah," she said. "I think so." Joy picked up her mug, taking a slow sip of water before saying almost too softly, "Good." The producers cut to Whoopi, who was trying desperately to lighten the mood again. "Well," she said, chuckling awkwardly. That was intense. "Well, be right back after this." The cameras faded to black, and the moment they did, Jennifer exhaled sharply, eyes glistening but steady. Joy turned away, whispering something to a producer that made him look nervous. Behind the stage, crew members exchanged wide-eyed glances. This wasn't just another heated talk show moment. Something real had cracked open on live TV and no one knew how to contain it. When the cameras came back, neither of them smiled, and the world was about to see what happens when respect turns into resentment and resentment turns into fire. The studio lights gladder than before, like they too could feel the rising heat between Jennifer Lawrence and Joy Behar. The tension wasn't just visible. It was vibrating through the air, tightening every breath, every pause. Joy sat stiffly, her cue cards forgotten on the table. Jennifer leaned back, calm but alert, her gaze sharp, her voice low and steady. The audience was silent now, caught between discomfort and fascination. Whoopi Goldberg gave a tight smile, trying to pull things back to civility. "So, Jennifer," she said, "your film Beneath the Surface. It's about emotional honesty, right? Facing what's underneath." Jennifer nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's about what happens when you stop pretending you're okay, when you stop trying to make pain look pretty." Her words were simple, but they cut deep. Joy let out a soft scoff, just loud enough to be caught by her mic. "Well, L-tickets," she said half under her breath. Jennifer froze, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she smiled. But there was no humor in it. "It's not about selling tickets," she said. "It's about being human." The crowd murmured, half in agreement, half in disbelief, that the tension had spiked again so quickly. Joy turned toward her. "Come on, Jennifer. You're good at this. Passionate, emotional, intense. But don't tell me it's not about money or fame. Everyone in Hollywood says it's about humanity. It's show business, not group therapy." Jennifer's face hardened. She shifted forward in her seat, her tone sharp, but still controlled. "You think it's easy to stand in front of a camera and let people see everything you're ashamed of? To break yourself open for strangers? You think that's an act?" Joy crossed her arms. I think people get paid a lot to be dramatic. And I think sometimes the line between performance and authenticity gets blurry, even for the performers. The audience gasped quietly. It was no longer an interview. It was a duel. Jennifer's voice trembled slightly, not with fear, but with emotion. You're right. The line does get blurry because when you live in a world where everyone's performing just to survive, pretending to be fine, pretending to be strong, sometimes the only real thing left is the act. For a moment, Joy didn't speak. Her eyes narrowed, but her lips stayed pressed together. Whoopi watched them like a referee, unsure if she should step in. Okay, she said softly. But neither of them heard her. Jennifer continued, her voice soft but unwavering. You laugh at emotion, Joy, but emotion is what connects people. It's what makes us human. Without it, all that's left is sarcasm and noise. Joy's response came out colder than she meant. It made a career out of sarcasm and noise. Seems to be working. Jennifer looked at her, sadness flickering behind the anger. Yeah, she said quietly. But at what cost? That line landed like thunder. The audience didn't move, didn't clap, didn't breathe. Even Joy seemed momentarily disarmed. Then, to everyone's surprise, Joy let out a small laugh, not mocking this time, just tired. You really believe that, don't you? Jennifer nodded. I have to, because if I don't, then none of it means anything. Joy leaned back, studying her for a moment. Her usual armor, wit, deflection control slipped. You're a lot braver than I was at your age, she said quietly. Jennifer blinked, caught off guard. Braver? Yeah, Joy said. You still think honesty changes things. Jennifer hesitated. You don't. Joy smiled faintly, but her eyes didn't. Honesty gets you headlines, then it gets you hate, then it gets you tired. There was something vulnerable in her tone, so faint it almost went unnoticed. But Jennifer noticed for the first time, she softened. Maybe, but silence doesn't save you either. The words hung there, heavy and raw. Whoopi, sensing a fragile truce, interjected with a light chuckle. Okay, we've gone deep enough to drown. Let's come up for air. The crowd laughed softly, relieved to exhale. But beneath that laughter, something real had shifted between Jennifer and Joy, between the show and its audience. Jennifer smiled weakly. Sorry, she said, looking toward Whoopi. I didn't mean to turn this into a therapy session. Joy gave a low chuckle. Hey, don't apologize. You brought some truth in here. We could use a little of that. It sounded like peace until Joy added almost playfully, though I still think you take yourself a little too seriously. The audience gave a light laugh, but Jennifer's smile didn't change. She leaned in slightly, her tone calm but piercing. And I think you hide behind jokes so you don't have to. The crowd reacted instantly, a mix of cheers and gasps. Joy blinked, taken aback. The words hit a place she didn't want touched. For a second, she looked genuinely hurt. Whoopi shifted in her seat. Oh boy, she muttered. Jennifer immediately sensed it. I didn't mean that to be cruel, she said softly. I just think people joke the loudest when they are scared to be quiet. Joy looked at her again, this time without the smirk, without the shield. There was something unspoken there, fragile. Then she said, barely above a whisper, You might be right. The audience didn't know what to do. Clap or stay quiet. They chose quiet. Jennifer smiled gently. That's all I was trying to say. Joy nodded slowly. Well, you said it. A hush filled the studio. The rare kind that felt sacred, not awkward. Two women from different generations, different worlds, staring across a table that suddenly didn't seem so wide. Whoopi exiled, relief and/or mixed in her voice. You know, she said softly, sometimes the best moments on this show are the ones that aren't planned. The crowd began to clap, slow at first, then growing stronger, heartfelt. Joy smiled faintly, her shoulders finally dropping. Jennifer returned it, not triumphant but understanding. For a fleeting moment, the tension melted. The fight, the pride, the sting, all of it gave way to something raw and human. Two women who'd spent years performing for millions had just shown who they really were. But as the applause rose, a single sentence from Joy, quiet, almost muttered, reignited the spark. You know, Jen, she said with a smirk returning to her lips, you'd make a great politician. You sound rehearsed even when you're emotional. The audience gasped. Jennifer froze. Her eyes met Joy's, calm but blazing. And you'd make a great actress, she said evenly. You hide behind your lines perfectly. The audience erupted, shouting, laughing, clapping all at once. Joy's smirk disappeared. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, gaze steady, pulse quick, but face composed. There was no going back now. Whatever this was, misunderstanding, truth, or pride, it had crossed a line. And when the cameras faded out, neither woman said a word. They just sat there staring at the table between them, knowing that the silence said everything. When the broadcast cut to commercial, the air in the studio was thick enough to choke on. The laughter that had erupted moments before had dissolved into uneasy whispers. Crew members hurried across the floor, pretending to adjust lights and cameras, but their eyes kept darting toward the table where Jennifer Lawrence and Joy Behar sat. Two women frozen in the aftermath of something raw and unplanned. Jennifer didn't move. Her hands rested in her lap, her fingers still trembling slightly from the adrenaline. Her face was calm, but her eyes, those bright, expressive eyes that had carried so many characters, were wet around the edges. Joy Behar stared straight ahead, lips pressed tightly together. The red glasses that had once been part of her bold, confident image now hung low on her nose, hiding her expression. For the first time that morning, Joy wasn't performing. Whoopi leaned back in her chair and exhaled deeply. "Well," she murmured, half to herself, "that's daytime history right there." When the commercial ended and the red light blinked on again, the energy was different. The audience, still buzzing from what they'd witnessed, didn't cheer this time. They clapped politely, cautiously, like they weren't sure which side of the moment to land on. Whoopi tried to recover the tone with her signature ease. "Welcome back to The View," she said lightly. Things got a little intense before the break, but hey, that's what happens when strong women talk about real things. The audience clapped again, unsure whether it was safe to laugh. Jennifer smiled faintly, though her jaw was tight. "I think honest conversations are the only kind worth having," she said quietly. Joy turned toward her, eyes sharp again, but voice controlled. "And sometimes honesty stings," she replied. "But that's how you grow, right?" Jennifer nodded once. "If it's meant to help, yes. If it's meant to humiliate, no." The crowd reacted audibly, gasps and murmurs like waves rolling across the room. Whoopi's expression said everything. "Here we go again." Sonny Hostin stepped in quickly, her tone soft and soothing. "You both have a point," she said. "Joy, you've made a career out of challenging people. And Jennifer, you've made one out of being emotionally open. Maybe that's what makes this uncomfortable. You're both mirrors in your own way." The tension paused for just a second, as if the words had hit a truth neither wanted to admit. Joy looked down, her fingers tapping the table. "I'm not used to people firing back on this show," she said finally. "Most guests just laugh it off." Jennifer's voice was gentle, not defiant. "Maybe more people should stop laughing it off." The audience clapped again, louder this time. The sound rolled through the studio like release, an acknowledgement of everything unsaid. Whoopi, ever the peacemaker, cracked a grin. "Well, you two just gave our viewers more honesty than they'll get in a week's worth of news." The laughter broke some of the tension, but the edge remained. The cameras panned in on Jennifer. Her face softened as she spoke, no longer defensive, just real. "Look," she said, turning slightly toward Joy. "I know I can come off intense, but that's not about ego. It's because I care about people, about truth, about not pretending everything's okay when it's not. Maybe I went too far, but I won't apologize for feeling something." Joy studied her expression, unreadable. "You didn't go too far," she said after a pause. "You just forgot this is a talk show, not a therapy couch." Jennifer smiled faintly. "Maybe sometimes people need a little therapy, even on a talk show." The audience laughed softly, almost relieved. For a brief second, the tension cracked and both women smiled, small but genuine. Then, without warning, Jennifer leaned forward and said quietly, "You know, Joy, you remind me of someone I love." "My grandmother. She was tough, sharp, didn't let anyone get too close. But when she finally did, she had the biggest heart." Joy blinked, startled by the sudden warmth in Jennifer's tone. "That's oddly flattering," she said with a small laugh. Jennifer nodded. She used to say, "People who tease the hardest usually love the deepest. They just don't always know how to show it." The audience melted, a collective rippling across the room. Joy chuckled softly, a hand brushing the edge of her cue cards. "Maybe she was right," she said. "Maybe I just don't show it the right way." Jennifer leaned back, smiling. "Maybe you just did." Applause broke out again. Not the explosive, scandal-fed kind from earlier, but genuine applause. It filled the studio with warmth. Even Joy looked slightly emotional as she looked away from the camera for a moment, blinking rapidly. When the music began to swell and Whoopi announced the wrap-up, the tension had finally lifted. But backstage, once the lights dimmed and the audience's applause faded into echoes, the story didn't end. Producers hovered, debating whether to edit the exchange or let it air uncut. One assistant whispered, "It's already trending. The clip's everywhere on social media." The confrontation spread like wildfire. Jennifer Lawrence trended within minutes. Half the internet called her brave. The other half called her dramatic. Clips of Joy Behar's smirk, Jennifer's defiant stare, and that final exchange. "You'd make a great actress. You hide behind your lines perfectly." Flooded TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube within hours. Comment sections burned with debate. Jennifer said what we've all wanted to say about toxic humor. Joy's just old school. She didn't mean harm. That wasn't an interview. That was therapy on live TV. But amidst the noise, one thing was undeniable. People felt something. They talked, argued, reflected about emotions, honesty, pride, and what happens when two worlds collide in front of millions. Later that evening, Jennifer posted a short note on her Instagram story. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a defense, just words against a black background. "I don't believe feelings make you weak. I think pretending not to have them does." Within minutes, it went viral. Joy, meanwhile, addressed it on The View the next morning. Her tone was lighter, but her message sincere. "Jennifer's tough," she said. "She gave as good as she got. And maybe I needed that reminder that being funny doesn't mean being right." It was short, honest, and it landed. By the end of the week, the clip had over 20 million views. Commentators called it the realest TV moment of the year. Others called it the day The View became a mirror. And for Jennifer Lawrence, it wasn't just another interview gone viral. It was something deeper, a battle for authenticity in a world built on pretending. Because sometimes the most shocking thing you can do on television isn't shout or argue or perform, it's feel. And that's exactly what she did. If you've watched this story unfold and felt that spark, that moment where truth collided with pride, then tell us what you think in the comments below. Do you believe Jennifer was right to defend her emotions? Or did Joy have a point about honesty needing restraint? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to Talk Narrative for more cinematic, emotionally charged moments just like this, where truth, pride, and humanity collide in the most unexpected cases.